It's a very, very, very fine
Time for
place.
Thinking Real Estate, back this week.
So is this on? I have a new microphone.
Yeah,
I feel like
Sound
a
good?
singer.
sound good.
Does it?
Yeah.
Probably sounds better.
Keep singing, you can sing.
Yeah, you haven't heard me. Obviously,
What-
if you
what,
said I
Crosby,
can
Stills?
sing. Anybody
I
can
just heard
sing.
you.
Anybody
Well, she's
can
actually
sing.
Neil Young of Crosby, Stills,
Oh.
Nash and Young. He
Yeah.
was-
Why can't I be the young?
That's what I said. You're young. You're Neil Young.
Oh yeah,
That's
you're
what I
right.
said.
Neil.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your
I only
voice,
heard
your
Neil.
voice is a little lower than his, but
Oh.
you're still Neil Young. Yeah.
Mm.
So, anyway, nice to see you, Greg.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Oh,
Everything okay?
I almost hit a deer just
Did you?
a few yards up. You couldn't see it because of all the shadow. The sun's so bright and all the shadows through your trees. I mean, literally, it was like a rat ran in front of me. Big rat, big
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you gotta roll in here about 4 o'clock.
really,
I'll bet.
They're all over those yards up
I'll
Oh.
bet.
Glenshire.
Yeah.
wow. Anyhow, that was my excitement for the morning.
Okay.
It's a Monday, that's fine.
And so I want to know, getting out here, West Avenue is blocked off.
Yeah,
That's,
I'll tell you, that is a pain.
It is. So do you think it's?
Can the city get that done?
Oh,
What's
oh!
going on?
Thank you, Greg.
What's
Greg.
going
We had this.
Yeah.
We had this. It's only been a month. It takes about 3 months to do that kind of project. We're doing infrastructure.
You know, I recognize my wife's a city council person, but I asked her this question. I said, why is it taking so long to do the stretch between High and, was it Griswold or High?
And I think there was
Pine Griswold.
about a week there, they
Or-
didn't do
yeah.
anything. But
Oh, don't blame the city. That could have been one of the utilities.
city gets blamed for everything.
I
Yeah,
know,
and
just
I
a
think-
blanket.
but I-
Just
but-
a blanket.
but I-
If it goes wrong, you might as well blame the
But
city.
I think unfairly, but it does concern me, sometimes these road projects, they just seem to stretch on, but I understand it does take time, particularly when you have the infrastructure going. So I'd actually like somebody to explain exactly what that process is and what the scheduling is, so that we don't just go around complaining about the fact something doesn't get done. It'd be
Well,
nice to know what it is.
where we had a total debacle was the Civil War weekend. All that traffic was rolling up there to the muster
Oh, I
and
leave-
was blacked out.
I leave town on that weekend.
Well,
Yeah, but no. Well, why was it blacked out? You can't turn on High Street.
you couldn't.
No.
Because the intersection's
From West
completely
Ave,
done?
you were
Okay.
you were trapped
Well, I
like
always-
like a rat.
Yeah, you couldn't go anywhere.
And if you were from out of town,
Huh.
you had to,
You pulled out your
Get your
musket,
homing-
filled it with black powder, and blast your way out. Right.
Well, there you
Okay.
go.
get a homing device.
So my question is,
you could see the Cascades, but you can't get there.
so we should have had signage where up at
Yes.
Morale?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20, right?
Or on West Avenue, just a detour.
Well, right, but I mean, the signage should have been up on West Avenue at Morale
Yeah.
to direct them to Brown.
There
Yeah,
was
that would have been.
the
There,
Civil
there,
War.
there
put
was
one.
a sign for the detour, but it's tough.
The Civil War put signs up.
I did that
Oh,
one.
did they? Oh, okay.
I went through one time because I couldn't see the sign. I'd get to that intersection, and the only way I could turn was left going across the dirt and the gravel to get to where I had to.
Yeah, I
and
always
that was
forget
blocked
about,
the
okay,
one
but
way.
my point is it quicker to go down 4th from our place on Michigan Avenue or Brown Street?
Depends on
What
time of
was-
day.
Can you not hear me? Is that what that's
Well,
all about?
She wasn't
You have a
talking to
mic
the
there.
microphone.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I gotta move this with,
She was doing the train effect, pulling it away from her mouth.
I'm not used to holding a mic.
But it depends upon the time of day. Because if you're trying,
So which way did
Depends
you
on where
come
you're
on?
going.
I usually take 4th
So did
coming
you
out.
take 4th this morning?
Yeah.
Because I took it, I thought about it, and I was actually pulling out of the driveway.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, that's probably not very stimulating conversation to the audience, right?
No, I think roads is anything to do with roads
Really,
is stimulating.
right.
It would
So,
just-
gas is coming down, right?
Well, no, I went. I saw it 250 today. So
Really?
No, I saw 227 coming
Yeah,
in today.
but you'll see it sometime
It'll be
today.
changing
Your
today?
favorite station will go up.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Is it last time was the refinery
It's
outside
Monday.
of Chicago.
It's Monday.
And so they just pop it up? I would think that they'd turn it up on the weekend, not on first day of the
Oh,
week.
I'll
Yeah.
check it out.
I don't pay attention. If I need gas, I gotta buy it.
That's true. But I did notice that one of the stations that's normally the lowest in town was at 250.
Which is that one?
So I was surprised when I got out here, it was still at in the
227.
225
Oh,
road.
well, we better
Yes.
get this show done, cause I need
Yeah,
gas.
I need some in my car too. I better stop by.
Hustle.
Yeah.
Yes,
Anyhow,
mine.
so I'm predicting that the state will just add tax to do the road repair, and we won't be able to see the benefit of the lower gas prices that the rest of the United States is seeing.
Well, there will be some pain there. There will be an additional gas tax or whatever they call it.
Right,
Yeah, but I don't mind. Look, I mean, we need to fund road repair.
As long as
somehow.
they-
That's,
use the money for
Yeah.
funding the roads,
Right.
but,
anyway.
Yeah.
okay, so
enough
you wanted to
politics
talk
today. Yeah.
about access to
Well, actually,
the
I,
lake?
when we talked last night, we said let's talk about how you get title away from somebody that actually has legal title through use of the property. But then this morning, I was at Starbucks and a buddy of mine came in and he had
Did you
an
tell him to
access
listen?
issue. Yeah, and he can't.
So that
he works at a
Oh,
place
so
where
he's
they
gonna
have
have to pay for
fluorescent
the
lights,
legal
et cetera.
advice.
Yeah, right.
Not when he could, although he could watch the
But
rerun
the
of
issue
this.
was access to Michigan Center Lake. But actually, before I met with him, you and I were talking this morning about a discussion, even though it's the end of the summer, a discussion about riparian boundaries and where your boundary line is. When your land touches the lake, where does that line go so that you know where you're going to put a dock, where you're going to put a boat hoist, what is your bottom land as a private property owner? But that ties into the access issue.
What does riparian mean?
Riparian means adjacent to or having rights in a body of water, an inland body of water, as opposed to what are called littoral rights, Littoral, which are rights on an ocean. Riparian rights, we apply in I think every state east of the Mississippi riparian rights law, that the riparian rights go to the adjacent, the property owner who is adjacent to the body of water. In other words, let me give you an example. Several years ago, I represented investors who were going to buy a dairy farm out on the west side of the state. When I saw the title work, there was an easement for irrigation to take water out of a river which was not appurtenant to, not adjacent to this particular farm. And I looked at that and I said, you can't do that in Michigan because riparian rights cannot be separated from the land that is adjacent to it. In other words, if I own land on Grand River, I cannot take that water and sell it to somebody off of the Grand River. I couldn't create an easement to irrigate somebody else's land. Riparian rights law says the rights to that surface water belong to the adjacent property owner, which is different from the states out west where they're having the drought, where riparian rights or water rights were conveyed decades ago or a century and a half ago to owners or parties who were not adjacent to that body of water. That's why they fight out there about water rights all the time. Who has the rights to this particular body of water? So riparian means I'm adjacent to a body of water. It could be an inland lake, could be a stream, could be a river, as opposed to, as I say, ocean, which is littoral, and the rights are different. And Michigan applies pretty much the English common law rights with respect to riparian rights. That I have the right to use a body of water, even if it's navigable. A navigable body of water in Michigan means that it's subject to the rights of the public. Navigable means it can float a log of commercial value, and it's not a dead-end lake, that it goes somewhere, and so rights of the public exist in that body of water. A good example would be Michigan Center Lake, which is the lake my buddy was asking me about this morning. That's a navigable body of water. There's public access. But a riparian owner has the right to owns the bottom land, although some townships are questioning that as well. But typically I own the bottom land to the center of the lake. I get to use that bottom land subject to the rights of other riparian owners and the rights of the public. And there are many disputes arise between riparian owners, whether it's on Michigan Center Lake or other lakes, particularly where there's a cove, where the lake has a little cove in it. So now if you drew lines to the center of that cove, everybody's bottom land converges and there isn't enough land to put a dock in, and so they now fight about who has the right to put a dock here, 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 all the way throughout that cove. And so we have disputes, constant disputes between property owners as to who owns what part of the bottom land. Fascinating subject that keeps lawyers property lawyer's very, very busy, so. What do you, I'm delivering a monologue, I don't wanna do that. Got a question?
late.
You're looking at me, yeah, I know. Got a question there, baby?
Actually, someone had asked me, since we're talking about water, you know, you had a case down in Lenawee County, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it's
down
not-
in Round Lake,
Right, where of course, the
was a
water's
cove.
edge, yeah, it's a cove, and the docks came out, and of course, they end up coming out looking like a pie shaped, and then when you put your boats on it,
it blocks the boats, et cetera, yeah.
and your boat is now on your neighbor's property,
Yeah.
because,
Well,
and, so
on your
someone,
neighbor's bottomland, right?
on your, yeah, it's floating over your
Yeah, right,
neighbor's
can't do that.
bottomland.
Can't do that, you
Yeah,
gotta have
someone
an
had asked
allocation.
me just recently about that, and I said, oh, you should talk to Bill, because he had
Yeah.
a case like that.
I've had dozens of cases like that over the years, but the one down on Round Lake was particularly interesting because, and this happens too, you know, this is a lake that the families have, you know, they've turned the cottages over to sons, daughters, grandkids, et cetera. And the people who have been out there for a long, long time. And even as not that long ago, more than 30 years, I'm trying to figure out how to say this, but, you know, let's say 30 years ago, somebody had a dock out. It was a single dock, just went out, and they'd have maybe a speedboat and a rowboat, and that was it. Well, what do you have now? You've got people that put a dock out, and then they put an L or an H on it, and they've got a speedboat for skiing, they've got a sunfish,
Wave runner.
they've got a couple of wave runners, and they have a party boat.
Pontoon
So
boat.
now you have, instead of owners who 30 or 40 years ago had one or two boats, now these people all have 4 or 5 water vehicles out there, and there's not enough room, and there are constant disputes about what you can do. And so the law has developed, over the course of the years, the law has developed different ways to allocate bottomland. And
Doesn't that just extend on your property line?
nope, not at all. That's what a lot of people think, is I just take my property lines and I extend them out into the lake. That ain't the way it works.
Okay.
Well, on Skiff Lake,
let's
where
suppose
we
what-
have property.
How does it
the-
work?
Let me make life easy. Let's suppose we had a perfectly round lake. It was a circle, okay? So now I take my property lines, when they hit the lake, I now take from that point and I go to the center point of the lake. So I would own a pie-shaped piece of the bottomland, and everybody around that lake would own a pie-shaped piece. Let's suppose that it's an oblong lake. Now what you do is you take the median line of the lake, the center line, and you draw lines which are from the property line perpendicular to the center line. In other words, your lines would not be an extension of the property line. They would be perpendicular to the median line of the lake and drawn to where your property lines hit the lake. That's how you would allocate bottomland. That often doesn't work because lakes are irregularly shaped. And so now we develop what's called a proportionate method, where a court goes in and says, you've got so much frontage on the lake, there's a total amount of frontage, so I'm going to allocate a percentage of the bottomland to your property so that everybody around the lake is treated equally.
But like on Skiff Lake, the legal descriptions actually go out into the lake. So, for example, Debbie Crownover, for example, lives on Skiff Lake, and her property line, I think, goes into the center, if not the entire part of that
It might,
island.
when the original description was set up, but it becomes irrelevant as to that. You'd have to go back and look at the history of how it was created, what all of the descriptions were on the lake. Riparian rights law in Michigan says the instant that your property touches the lake, you have riparian rights unless it was platted in a different fashion. There's a lake, Winans Lake, up in, is that Washtenaw County, or in Livingston County, where the platter actually platted it, so there's a 3-foot strip around the lake.
Oh, right.
So nobody has riparian rights into Winans Lake unless you're a member of the association, which owns that 3-foot strip
that
and
how-
the bottomlands.
Is that how Michigan Center is set up?
I have no idea, I don't know.
Didn't
I
we
don't- I
deal
don't
with that,
think so.
Jackie? When we just sold that piece
There's
of property?
something weird on. every
There's
step.
something weird at Michigan Center.
Could be, but there's some municipalities that are claiming bottomlands, or at least the oil and gas rights underneath bottomlands. That's an issue. I mean,
I think
this is a subject that you could spend hours and hours talking about, because there are so many issues that arise over access to the lake, because many municipalities, many townships have adopted keyhole ordinances limiting access. You now have battles between the public, who claim that a body of water is navigable, versus the private property owners who claim that it's not navigable. and
You got
there are no
road
rights of the
ends.
public. You now have the Michigan statute providing for municipal control over road ends that are platted that end in a body of water.
Sounds like a mess.
It provides a lot of work for me, thank God. It keeps my wife in the style to which she's unfortunately become accustomed.
There you go.
But let me just on around, what was interesting about that particular one is the one property owner, an elderly couple, been there for 40 years or something, they sold, but they sold to somebody out of Toledo. Family comes in, wants to do a bigger dock, so they put out a dock with an H and it blocks off the neighbor. The guy from Toledo would go home during the week. The guy who was there during the week, what they do is they come and they take the dock and they move it over to the other side to where it was blocking the other neighbor. Well, the next week, that neighbor would come over and move it over. Finally, the two neighbors on both sides of the guy from Toledo, they said, well, this is really not working. So when the guy left for the weekend, and they left for the week, they just took the dock out and piled it on his property. And so that went on. So finally, they had to have a lawsuit between, I represented 4 of the property owners on this cove against the guy from Toledo who was coming in and putting a dock out. And we had a huge battle down in the Lenawee Circuit over that. Finally resolved it where he was limited to putting a dock in a certain area, a certain angle, et cetera. Couldn't put an H, et cetera, et cetera.
Didn't the judge even come and look at it?
Yeah, the day of the trial,
Right.
the other judge in Lenawee Circuit, a terrific judge, came out and we spent a few hours niffing on about what was going on and avoided a trial and a settlement. I won't bore you with the details what happened after, but there was an unhappiness with the settlement, and the owner took his boat and rammed it into the back of another boat, and they saw him go over, and he now loads his boat onto a trailer. They call the state police, and he's driving a big red truck. He's towing a trailer and sees the state police that are now out there, and he takes off. And there's a chase that ensues with the
Really?
state
I don't
police.
remember you telling
State
me.
police chasing after a guy in a big red truck towing a boat. Now, how do you
Oh.
think that chase is going to end? Okay.
Not well for the truck driver. Not well.
Was that the guy from Toledo?
I'm not at liberty to say. Well, we won't name any characters in this, but yeah, that was an interesting lawsuit. But I mean, the
It
battles.
never ceases to amaze me how people think that other people's property, just because something wasn't there before, should maintain that way, or just because I want to do something. Do you know what I'm saying?
I live with people. A lot of people are arrogant. A lot of people are selfish. A lot of people have no consideration for others. That's what keeps us lawyers in business. Seriously. Okay?
I mean,
if everybody got along, you wouldn't need lawyers, Laura. And
There you
where
go.
would we be? We'd probably be
What about
trying to find a place
access?
to live over in Hungary or Germany right now.
what about if you have a river on your property,
Okay.
and the best access to get to that river by kayak or canoe is and the river's close to the border boundary, but it's on your property.
Yeah.
Now I want to get on your property so I can put my boat in there.
That would not be, you can't do that, right? On a river, you have the right, if it's a navigable body of water, okay, and it's, members of the public can navigate, can go down it. The only right they have to go on the land is where the navigable body of water is blocked, and they must portage, or they in order to get around the obstruction and the otherwise navigable body of water, they must go onto your property in order to get around that barrier. That's the only time in the navigable body of water that a person is entitled to go on the dry land. Otherwise, they don't have
What
access.
if you fenced it off and now I can't portage over it?
I don't have a right to block the members of the public to be able to portage around or get around
Oh,
that
really?
obstruction.
Okay.
Yeah, I cannot
Alright.
do that.
What if
Now,
I have land, what if I own, the river runs through my property and just a sliver of the legal description is on, let's say you own the river runs through your property and just a sliver of your legal description now comes on the land that I own that fronts that water.
You just lost me on that one. I have not, what are you talking about?
Okay, so,
You only have a minute here.
right, here's the river. you own all of this land and a sliver on this side.
Oh, on
of
the other
river.
side?
Right, and I own here.
Yeah, if your
And
land
so I'm
doesn't,
SOL, I don't
If-
have access.
yeah, you're sure out of luck.
And
SOL is a legal term of art. Yeah,
Right.
you gotta touch the you gotta touch the body of water in order to have riparian rights.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, and that, what happens is if the river shifts sometimes, then there's a doctrine, if it shifts by avulsion, a flood or some other catastrophic event, your boundary line doesn't shift. If that river shifts by erosion, your boundary line will shift with that river as well.
Ah,
Okay? Erosion
Interesting.
versus
what
avulsion.
if you just bought this property and I've owned this one for a while? How do I know if it's shifted, or how do you know if it's shifted?
Let's talk about that next week.
All right.
Go with what you need to talk about.
Okay, so we have price reductions on a couple of properties, great properties. 502 Orange Street is a darling bungalow, and it's actually good size. It's over 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. It is down to $49,900. Really cute house. And then 750 Beverly Park Place is at 131,900. That is a 1,900 square foot, 3 bedroom, 1.5 bath house. Really cute, nice house on a great road. Beverly Park Place is a boulevard. So it really has character. And then we're having an open house from 1 to 2:30 at 2654 Virginia Court, which is out at Clark Lake and is on a road end to the lake. But that's a cream puff of a house. It's 1 bedroom, 1 bath, move-in ready, all high end in there, 149.9, over 800 square feet, and 1 to 2:30, 2654 Virginia Court.
Sunday.
Clark Lake, Sunday. And what else? I guess that's it.
Call.
Call 780-3800.